Welcome to Chamber Chat. This is John Tayer, and President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber, and this is our bi-weekly opportunity to check in with our Boulder Chamber membership and the Boulder business community at large to chat about some of the things that we're doing at the Boulder Chamber, give you a little sense of some of the activities that you can be engaged with, but also to chat with some of the leaders in our community who are helping us to deal with the consequences of COVID-19 and to get through these challenging times. And today we're so fortunate to have the Senate Majority Leader, Stephen Fenberg, with us, as well as our House Representative, Edie Hooton. So looking forward to that conversation. But before we do, I just want to alert you to a couple of important things that are happening at the Boulder Chamber. So first of all, we have our annual celebration of leadership coming up in the new year. That is our opportunity to honor business leaders who are both driving our economy and supporting our community. So I urge you to think about who are worthy for these awards and go to our website because the deadline for nominations is January 20. So make sure to get those nominations in. And then second, we're also getting ready now for our full schedule of events for 2021. And the first one on tap, that's a major signature event, is our annual economic forecast, which is on January 28. So make sure to go to the Boulder Chamber website, check out the calendar of events, and register for that economic forecast because you're going to want to know what's ahead for us in the coming year as a result of the challenges of 2020, but the bright future ahead that we anticipate for our economy and our community in 2021. So look forward to having you register for those events. But enough for me. It's now a chance to chat with our two state legislative guests who are going to talk to us about what happened during the last special session, or the special legislative session, which was designed to help deal with the significant impacts of COVID-19. So I'm going to first ask Edie Hooton, our state representative. Edie, if you can just tell us, what were the concerns that the state legislature was hoping to address in this special legislative session, and what were some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of?
Well, John, thanks very much for having me and Steve here today. It's always great to check in with the chamber. Really very grateful for the leadership of Governor Polis and for calling this special session. I mean, obviously, our priority was dealing with the pandemic and how it's devastated individuals, their health, but certainly our economy, and people are really hurting. And that was the purpose of the whole session. We were able to we listened very closely to the business community, and also just through landlords, from tenants, from the many families who were two working members of a household, and now it's down to one, so someone can take care of children at home. And that is a big impact on the economy. It's a big impact on the finances of a household. As you know, there's been tremendous demand on food banks. So we were able to provide some assistance to landlords and tenants, directly to small businesses through the form of grants, to provide more funding for childcare. And, our restaurants and bars, they're probably the businesses that are hurting the most, giving them some tax relief. So I think I basically touched on that, and I know that Steve will elaborate, but it wasn't as much as we'd like to have done. Colorado is not like the federal government. We have to balance our budget. And so we were able to spend, $350 odd million with an extra $100 million with the extra $100 million for the governor to consider using for in 2021. But we did what we could, recognizing the need that Coloradans have. And the governor referred to this as a bridge. Um, and I think it is. Everyone I've talked to, it feels very grateful that we were able to do something in a bipartisan way in 3 days, which, you know, we didn't necessarily know it was going to go that smoothly. But I think we can thank Alec and Steve a lot. Alec Garnett, our incoming speaker, for facilitating that
It's
between two
impressive.
caucuses. Yep.
It's
So thank
impressive. I mean, just you mentioned the bipartisan nature, but obviously stepping up during and recognizing these critical needs and taking on so much effort within the confines of a tight budget. Well, let me turn it to Steve and just hear from him. What are some of the accomplishments that you're most proud of from the special session?
Yeah, well, thanks, John, for having us here. And Edie's exactly right. We were focused on a very narrow set of priorities. This 3-day whirlwind session, and we passed 10 bills. We went in thinking maybe we'd pass between 7 and 10 bills, and we had our topics lined out. And they're exactly what Edie referred to. We wanted to provide direct financial relief to the individuals, the families, the small businesses that are suffering the most. Obviously, everybody is in a tough spot. Everybody is feeling the impacts of this crisis that very much started out as a health crisis, and it's obviously still a health crisis, but it's morphed into an economic crisis for everyone as well. And so we focused on the small business relief. So as Edie said, direct financial relief to small businesses so they can apply for it, especially ones who are impacted by occupancy limits around the state. But we also did something that I think is pretty interesting and provides relief immediately to some of these small businesses. And that's by giving people a 4-month state sales tax holiday, essentially. So it's not a holiday on the consumer, it's a holiday on the business. So they still collect the 2.9% state sales tax, but the business can keep that money to help them get through the winter and get them through to hopefully when the weather is nicer and they can have more people in their restaurants and their bars and things like that. We also provided some much needed support for childcare providers. They are feeling the pressure in a very unique way. And as Edie said, food pantry assistance, utility assistance to make sure people can keep their lights on and their home heated this winter. And then about $100 million towards the direct response to the health crisis. So that's going to be helpful for surge capacity in our hospitals, for continuing the testing sites that we have, and all of that. And as Edie said, it's important. It's going to help a lot of people. I think that these bills are going to help some small businesses keep their doors open. It's going to help people pay their rent and stay in their home, and it's going to help people be able to ensure that there is a child care provider for them in their family. But it's not going to solve the problem. Unfortunately, only Congress can probably do that with the access to the resources they have. And it's really important that they act. And it's kind of sad that we even had to come in to do this, because we wouldn't have if Congress was doing their job. And that's not a jab at our delegation. It's more about sort of the breakdown in leadership in DC.
Well, we certainly at the Boulder Chamber appreciate that advocacy for a strong federal relief, but also we were great advocates for the work that you were doing on behalf of, in particular, small businesses, but all the other areas of need that you addressed during the special session. But with respect to the small business relief, Steve, anything you can tell us about how small businesses can access the support and how that will roll out?
Yeah, it's a good question, and oftentimes we pass a bill and then it takes months and months before anybody really sees any movement. And so we were really cognizant of that, knowing that the need is now. And if we can pass a bill and 9 months from now some money starts trickling out, it's really not solving the crisis that we meant to help solve. So in all of these bills, all of these programs, we really targeted existing infrastructure, existing programs. so that we don't have to spend a bunch of time and money setting something brand new up. So on the small business relief part, what that looks like is a lot of the funds will actually go to the county to administer, because many of them already have some of these programs set up, or at least the basics of a program, partially because of CARES Act money, or other just, efforts that they have already had. So a lot of the funding will go to the county to then administer for a small business. So small businesses pretty soon will be able to apply for the money largely through their county governments. And that will probably take, the idea is for it to be assistance for the winter months. So we're hoping that by the end of the year, that's going to start happening, and there's going to be some things put in place for businesses to start getting ready to apply for that funds. The great thing about the other aspect, so there were two bills around small business support, and that one is the direct grant support. The other one, and we did carve out some specific not requirements, but making sure some of the money was earmarked for certain types of businesses. So there's a segment of that $50-some million that goes towards arts organizations, nonprofits that we don't consider a business in the legal sense, but they're obviously suffering right now and important to our communities. And then there's also a segment of the money that is specifically for minority-owned businesses. But so that money will start flowing hopefully by the end of the year. And then the other piece that we passed it takes on a different form, and that's the sales tax relief. And the great thing about that is obviously that's already a program, right? People know how to pay their sales tax to the state. The state knows how to administer it. And what we did is we worked really closely with the governor's office. So the governor delayed the collection of sales tax for November, saying that you don't have to pay it for a while. And then when we came into special session, we passed a bill that said, in fact, we're going to forgive it and you don't have to pay it at all. And it actually starts in November and goes through February. So it's 4 months of sales tax that a business can retain. It's only the state portion, so it's not the local portion. It's the 2.9% that's on top of the local, and it's up to $2,000 a month for 4 months, and each location can collect it. So if you're a restaurant with 3 locations, you can do it for all 3 of them. Not everybody is going to be able to benefit from that, because like I'm actually a small business owner myself outside of Boulder County, and we decided to shut down for the winter. So we don't have any sales to then have sales tax collected, but we thought it was important that there were sort of different avenues, different types of programs, because a lot of businesses are there's a diverse set of circumstances out there right now. But the sales tax program will provide relief immediately for a lot of these businesses that are still doing some activity in the community.
I love it. It's a great comprehensive spectrum of support, and I really appreciate that. I wonder, Edie, do you have anything to add around some of the opportunities for businesses to access the support? And I'm also wondering, any suggestions on how they can get more information on the support that's available?
So, John, as Steve said, some of these are grant programs administered at the county level. I generally direct everyone to you who has a small business question.
I didn't ask you to say that, but
I know. We also, the governor has a website. It's excellent. It's the COVID relief link. I don't have it at the tip of my fingers, but I'll make sure that you have it so you can post it on the Chamber's website. Wonderful. But if you just go to the governed COVID relief, Google will get you there, and it has a great directory of resources. And whether you're a landlord or a tenant or a small business owner or an individual who needs some healthcare, childcare assistance, it's a very well constructed website. So, but I will follow up with you and make sure you have those links. You and Andrea had those links for the Chamber's website.
I so appreciate that, Edie.
Yeah.
Well, let me turn it to sort of a looking forward question. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, what is your vision for our recovery from this COVID-19 experience, both from a human side and also from the business economic perspective? And what role do you expect that the state legislature will play in that?
The legislature is going to be very focused on economic recovery. And they'll be looking at tax incentives, maybe some investment in infrastructure, some more tax relief. But stimulating the economy is going to be vital to our recovery, especially now that we've got vaccines. I mean, they're arriving this week, 49,000 doses. Yeah, fingers crossed. And the governor has already set up 8 hotspots around the state for the distribution of those vaccines. And I think the way they're being prioritized makes a lot of sense. So as we get a handle on the epidemic, we need to get a handle on the economy and keep it from a free fall. Of course, always hoping that at some point we're going to get some federal relief. But there are things that the legislature will be considering in the form of not only stimulus for business through direct assistance or through programs, but also to continue to support individuals so they can continue to patronize, right, the businesses that they frequent. There may be some kind of a buy local campaign. Amazon has been tremendously convenient for so many of us, but and it's just safe to say inside, but our local businesses really need our support. And so we will look for creative ways to support them through multiple means. But I think you're going to see quite a bit of focus on how to support our economy in recovering.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about the need to support the consumers of the businesses in our community, and their ability to then patronize our local businesses and drive their success. So that circular relationship is so critical, and I appreciate that you're going to be addressing both elements of that. Well, let me just turn that question then to Steve and ask just your own sense of the vision for the economic and community recovery, and then the role of the state legislature in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what the next week looks like, let alone the next 6 or 9 months. But it's obviously going to be the absolute number one priority is figuring out what we as a state can do to ensure the fastest economic recovery as possible. And honestly, I think it's important to consider that we don't want to just get back to exactly where we were the day before the pandemic hit. There were obviously structural problems, inequities, and things we still needed to do back then. We think of it now as the utopia that we used to live in 9 months ago when we could sit at a coffee shop. But obviously there were problems in our economy and a lot of people were still suffering back then. So we need to do it in a way that not only gets us to where we were, but hopefully builds back in a way that we can actually surpass where our economy was and where families were before this pandemic. So we're going to be looking a lot at equity and how when we do these relief programs, when we do think about parts of our economy that we're not leaving anybody behind. But it seems obvious to say, but I think it's good to remind ourselves that the fastest, best way to get our economy back on its feet is to beat this virus. And that's why, even though we're all exhausted of wearing masks and not being able to go to our favorite restaurants and not being able to see our families over the holidays, it's so incredibly important, because when we let up, it just means that this pandemic gets worse and goes on longer. And that has a direct consequence on our businesses and our economy. So the more we can do as a community to get this thing under control, the faster our coffee shop can open, the faster our restaurant can open, the faster our childcare centers will be at full capacity, et cetera. So there's a lot of responsibility on us as individuals in our communities. But from a legislative standpoint, we were fortunate to be able to do this stimulus package very recently in the special session. That was something that we actually had started putting into the works for January. But we saw how urgent it was and the lack of federal action, and that's why we came back for this special 3-day session. But there's multiple parts of that overall stimulus package and vision that we weren't able to get done in those 3 days for whatever reason, and we're going to prioritize those pieces in January. And a lot of those, I got a baby crawling around the floor right now.
I heard childcare initiatives are particularly important.
Please give us childcare. What we were doing this past special session was direct injection of resources to people who are absolutely suffering right now. That's for families, individuals, small businesses. What we're going to look at more in January is some structural support to get the economy overall back on its feet. And some of that we're still figuring out, but I think it's going to look a little bit less like, here's $50 to help keep your energy on. And it's more going to be about how do we put money into things like infrastructure and transportation projects so that people have jobs, and that is going to churn within our communities to have a multiplier effect in so many different ways. It's great to give out resources and relief to people who need it immediately, but we need to start building the economy, not just stop the bleeding. And so that's what we're going to think about a lot in January. I'm hopeful a transportation package will be part of that solution. I'm hopeful that we will be doing some injection of resources for things like wildfire mitigation, which, it comes back to us in a benefit in multiple ways. It provides jobs, provides economic activity, but also means that we're more prepared for fighting other crises that we know we're going to continue to have.
Well, again, I will say that I love the comprehensive nature of the approach, and will say that the Boulder Chamber will be a big partner with you in that effort. Our theme has been that we want a strong and inclusive economic recovery, recognizing that there are many inequities that we have allowed to fester, and this is our opportunity to address those as we lift everybody through this response and recovery to COVID-19 experience. So I'm so thankful for both you, Stephen, as well as Edie, for your important critical work down at the state legislature, both in the special session with this infusion of direct support, but also your long-term perspective that you shared with us. So thank you so much for spending some of your valuable time with us today on Chamber Chat, and we'll look forward to working with you through the 2021 legislative session. So from me to our Boulder Chamber Chat viewers, I just want to thank you for watching with us today. Remember to get those nominations in for that celebration of leadership, honoring our great business leaders in our community. Get those nominations in by January 20, and also register for our economic forecast on January 28. You're going to want to know what's ahead for our economy as you plan your business activities going into this new year. And so, as I always like to say at the end, the best way that we can help lift our economy and get through this period, something that our Senate Majority Leader mentioned as well, is to follow those health guidelines. That means when you're out, wearing your mask, and we'll see you next time on Chamber Chat.